Well, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back. George Morgan here at your service. It's PSGL, it's Wednesday night, it's Spain tonight as well. Lots on the table, lots of battling. The title contest is still alive and kicking. And Jack, it's only taken us 10 rounds. We're on the 11th. It's all to play for.
Boromant goes on the inside and takes the lead on the final lap of the race. Now it's side by side between Boromant and Warner, but Boromant's got the inside.
Literally a guest star here in this phenomenal race. Cameron Dowd looking to take P2 in his very first PSGL F1 PC race. Incredible to say the least. You see that Putin's still lead. 1.5 seconds. DRS is the name.
Hello everyone, welcome one and all. PSGL PC F4 is back. First things first, you'll notice some stream upgrade, buttery smooth 1080p 60. Managed to get it sorted, and it's perfect timing too, because we are here in Imola, and we are here with none other than Myth Sky, the one and only. How are you doing, mate? Good to see you.
Pretty good. It's been a fairly calm week so far, but I think all the heat is gonna start tonight. And then, of course, after tonight, we have the resuming season of F1 itself this weekend at Zandvoort. But first, we're here at Imola, and I'm pretty excited for it. Going to see a couple of good laps, some hopefully very, very nice qualifying action, and yeah, just overall great track.
Yeah, I absolutely love quali. And just a reminder, so we are in the second half of the season now. So we're at round 7, which take us to the beautiful track of Imola. Of course, historic entry as far as F1 and motorsport history goes. And there's plenty to look forward to for the rest of the season. But before we look forward, we must look back, and we want to discuss the results of Japan. So no penalties, so the results are as they stand. All that we had was one small incident, which just had a warning and a license point attached. I believe that was Royal Sprogus. But even so, takes home that win from Japan, and with a few very fast drivers in tow. So with a brilliant quali performance, we had Alexander Dimas only finishing 3rd in the end, but still put out a really good race. And the end of it, Silly Sly Guy, although got 2nd in quali, ended up coming in 7th. A little bit of tussling out there on track that ended up affecting that quite massively. And then Sven Schumacher going from 3rd to 2nd. But you can see the rest of the results on screen. Reserves as well. Shout out to the reserve drivers, of course, not having a permanent spot in the calendar in terms of race seats, but still on their day putting in some great performance. The likes of Harry and the likes of, I want to read that quite.
Sixten Linhard and Arda Gune. Yeah.
There you go. You can read it a lot bigger than me because I've got this very small OBS preview. But yeah, shout out to reserves, shout out to drivers, and we look to the driver's standing and can see that Dimas with that 3rd place, even with Sprogus on their tail and getting the win last time out. So Sprogus has 3 wins to their name. So 50% of this calendar has been in Sprogus' pocket. The only reason they are in P2 is because those other results have been what's letting them down. And you can see with Dimas, every single race has been a points finish. And I think that's a good testament to consistency here. Wouldn't you agree?
I definitely agree. I mean, if you look at a win in Brazil, a win in Qatar, last week a win in Japan, and then a 12th and 15th place in Austria and Silverstone. Those didn't go too well, and then Bahrain, he did not start. But that does mean he's only 1 point shy of Alexander Dimas, who did score in all of the races, but is yet to pick up a win. 2nd place to 3rd places, 5th place to 6th places with 1 fastest lap as well. But as you can see on screen, it's really heating up. Alexander Dimas, Sprogus 1 point apart. Then for 7 points from our leader, we have Milan Meyer, who was leading the championship up until last race, and even Santa Maria about 7 points away. And I think this weekend we should see the return of Lillian as well, who missed 2 races, who used to be on top of the pack. So I'm very curious to see how far up they can finish today here at Imola.
Yeah, so Lillian is going to be returning. Of course, have one of the drivers with a very strong start, but missed the last 2 rounds. So they are returning here for Imola for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. But we will see how they do, because the challenge is certainly there and the battle has heated up. So they can certainly get themselves closer to those front runners. They are 16 points behind the championship lead. So I think today is just going to be more about getting back into the swing of things and maybe not necessarily going for the win, although they could have it on the cards, but certainly going for those podium spots. Because we actually, if we look back to last week, not a lot of drivers had touched Imola since F1 22, so I'm curious as to if we're going to see a lot of unpredictability. I know some drivers are going to have practiced, of course, since we last talked to them, and practiced hard, but of course having an entire game entry of break from that particular track, it's going to affect your performance somewhat.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Imola, one of those tracks where you really need to get the feel down, and once you have the feel right, you'll definitely get some very fast laps in there. Track hasn't changed from last year. Of course, the cars have significantly changed, and I mean, overall, just an amazing track. The only thing that the drivers will have to watch out for in quali are track limits. Turn 9, Piratella, very easy to get off track here, very fast left-hander. So it is, well, quite easy to get off track here. Of course, we didn't see any action in the real world on Imola this year because of the extreme floodings that happened there this year. And to me, what's always the most surprising is how they announced the Grand Prix. So it can't be the Grand Prix of Italy because you already have one, that's Monza. So you have the Grand Prix of Emilia-Romagna, which is at the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Indino Ferrari, which is the full name of the race, which is a mouthful. I dare you to say that 3 times in a row. But...
Yep, those sure are words you said just now, but very important words. Of course, they're paying homage to the Ferraris, because Enzo Ferrari, founder of the brand. And yeah, its heritage is very strong, especially when it comes to Europe and motorsport and F1, because we have the blessing of having so many great locations in Europe motorsport, whether that is in things in active rotation like Spa-Francorchamps, Imola, Monza, all the way to tracks that haven't necessarily seen a lot of action, like the Nürburgring GP circuit, for instance. And even if we turn back the clocks and look at things like the Nordschleife, the Green Hell, as it were, an absolute roller coaster of a circuit, and probably the scariest experience you can ever have, especially when you're going around it in a rental car. But that is another story for another time. The story we're focusing on is this championship, and we have got the return of all our top runners. We have got Dimas in here. We are waiting on a few to join, and we will be getting to the lobby in a couple of minutes, but all of our top runners, Sprogis, Maya, Santa Maria, are expected to be here, and with give or take about 10 points, so a race's worth realistically between the top 4 drivers. So you can see the gap to first is for even Santa Maria, it's just 7 points, and that is a tight gap. That could be the difference between, I believe, first and fourth, which is a big enough points difference.
Yeah, the gaps are really, really small on top, and definitely don't count the other drivers out. I mean, Sven Schumacher showed that he can definitely pick up some points as well. We now have Lillian returning. Andrew Karapi didn't have his greatest race last time round at Suzuka, but now perhaps Imola will favor them a little bit better. So essentially we have, well, still there's about a good 7 drivers in for the running. Maybe some more people that will join in with the fights, because the battles up front are quite close. And I think when we're going to be done with the next 3 races, so when we're done with Imola, Spa, and Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, I think around about then we can really see who the championship protagonists are, because at the moment there's too many to name, really.
Yeah, well, we've got 4. I'd say 4 championship protagonists, as in within one race of each other we could see the position change. Like, for instance, if Santa Maria, as mentioned earlier, if they get first and Dimas gets 4th and no one's in the way in between, then they take the lead of the championship. Same goes for, say, Sprogis. Even just a first to a second will leapfrog. And there's so many different ways that this championship could go with this kind of proximity between the top drivers. It's really crazy. Taking a sidestep briefly into the Constructors' Championship, McLaren looking very strong, but the lead is not that large. So the Constructors' Championship, thanks to some standout performances carrying some teams in some cases, have really not been that big in terms of gaps. So Milan Mai and Leo Lund for the McLaren team lead with 61 points, with Iman Santamaria and Simone Violo with 57 for the British Racing Green. That's going to be Aston Martin, and Red Bull in the 3rd spot with Ben Marples and Alexander Dimas. And Dimas in particular is going to be a particular one that I'm personally keeping my eyes on, as we can look and see that they have had a pretty good consistent string of results, and that is certainly going to be a trend I hope continues. Like, I'm coming into Imola with expectations. I mean, we're going to see some upsets with Lillian back on the field, but Dimas is one that has got a really good sense of momentum right now, I feel, and one that we should really be paying attention to.
We definitely should. Like Dimas said in our interview that we had last week, is a bit better in the races itself. Qualifying usually doesn't go all that great. Even though he did pick up pole in the last race, he was very, very pleased to see such a fast lap time with a 1:25.7 at Suzuka. And I mean, his racecraft is great. A lot of other drivers are close, so I think Alexander Dimas perhaps could be battling for the pole position here tonight as well. And to be fair, it's just really, really hard to call who can call it, because there's at least 5, 6, maybe even 7 drivers that can get the pole. I think if I have to place bets on anyone, I think I have to say Rigard Sprogus. He was our winner from last race. Qualifying last time round did go pretty okay, was in 5th. But somehow I have a feeling that the qualifying tonight will go a little bit better for him. What do you think?
I'm torn, because on one hand, I definitely see that Sprogus has amazing pace, clearly has the moxie to really take this whole thing, but they just need to get the consistency down. My worry is that they may get pole position in qualifying, absolutely. I'm not writing that off, and I'm inclined to agree with you there, because if we look back, they did have potential. I believe that they at one point did get blocked partway through a lap, but they certainly have the potential to be up there. My issue is if they cannot keep that consistent run, and with 3 wins, certainly nothing to scoff at. Amazing results, but they are surrounded by P15, P12 in the case of round 3 and round 5. So hopefully seeing those wins get closer together, maybe we'll get back-to-back podiums, but the consistency levels I think might be indicative of pushing the car a bit too much at times. I don't know, it's tough to call. I am going to be hedging my bets personally for qualifying. I'm going to say Dimas. Consistent runner, and I feel like this is a less technical track. You've got some very technical sections, but by and large, it's a lot more just about finding a consistent rhythm, carrying your speed through, particularly the first sector, just balancing your car on the edge. And I think that consistency is going to speak a lot to Dimas's style of doing things. But we're about to jump into the race now, and we shall see. So anyone in the chat, let us know who you are rooting for, and let's do this. Go, Devon.
Well, looks like it is sunny for qualifying, so that is good news. Of course, we haven't seen the weather reports yet for the race, so that is still a bit of a mystery, because weather can always come into play here at Imola. Just to take you through the track a little bit, track's 4.9 kilometers long, or 3 miles in UK figures, 19 corners, and the lap records held by Lewis Hamilton, a 1:15.484 set in 2020 during the race. What is very notable here is that the most pole positions on this track go to Ayrton Senna. He's got 8 poles here, but even more impressive, he holds the record of having the most consecutive poles out on any track, 7 consecutive pole positions between 1985 and 1991, although the most wins go to Michael Schumacher, who has 7 race wins here. Of course, back then, the race was still called the Grand Prix of San Marino, albeit the track not in San Marino. 19 corners, as mentioned before, as we first head into the, well, a corner with the most history, perhaps, the Variante Tamburello. After that section, you go into Villeneuve, Tulsa turn 7, the hairpin, then into Piratella, the corner for track limits, and the beautiful, all beautiful Acqua Minerale before we cross into the Variante Alta, and finally Rivazza. I think that takes you through most of the information here. So we see our drivers on track doing their outlaps for the first lap. So let's see who's going to go for the laps first.
Let's see, we shall. So first out on track is going to be Valent Enriquez in that beautiful Williams. And it's looking nice and hot out on track today. It's looking fairly dry, so these are really optimal conditions for extracting maximum pace. I imagine these are the closest conditions as well to what the drivers have been practicing, because typically when you practice, and this everyone makes this mistake, I think, is that you often only practice for ideal conditions. And certainly something I found is that you do that. Yes, you improve your raw skill on the track, but it can be an issue if you, say, bump into a little bit of overcast, a little bit of a colder track.
Yeah, this is something that you should definitely keep an eye. Of course, the lower the temperature is, the lower the grip levels are also going to be. And tire degradation also changes based on the temperature out there. Of course, the hotter it is, the easier the tires will go down. Because you have more grip, the tires will also degrade a little bit faster. So a lot of things that you need to keep in mind, and also the differences between the compounds play into place here. And I see in the chat, whenever a user says there's going to be rain in the race.
Rain
That's
in
exciting.
the race. Well, if they know that, then I wouldn't be surprised if we see a big disparity in times, because you're going to see people going for more wet setups or more intermediate. And that's, of course, going to affect their on-track pace.
Yeah, setup's definitely key here, as Valendelek is just at the purple sector. Of course, he's the first one to go through there, so it has to be purple. But what is important with the setups, as you just mentioned, most of the drivers will put their cars a little bit higher, because if you have rain, you of course want to make sure that your car doesn't bottom out too much. So if you bottom out too much, as well with the tires, if you go aquaplaning, there's no holding that car, and you're going to go off the track. As we see our fastest lap so far at 1:13.7, as the next drivers are now going to come through.
There's a few more drivers. Yeah, so generally rule of thumb is take your car a little bit higher, make sure it's a bit more balanced, maybe even a little bit softer sprung, because in some cases your car can more easily get unsettled, and that helps a little bit with stability at the cost of pace and ground effect. Simone Violo, 13.441. Lillian with a 13.397. Brilliant banker lap from that AlphaTauri there, as you've got a few more coming through. Cornet de Backer, crossing the line. Got Marek in P5. You've got, I believe that is going to be Sven Schumacher. Unfortunately, has invalidated. So we look behind to, I believe Leo Lund was going to set a lap, but we took over to his teammate, who is going to be pushing here. And, ooh, snap of the rear, and the track limits have kicked in. So Aqua Minerale is such a weird corner to look at from top down, because it doesn't look that steep. It's odd. It's amazing what perspective can do, because it doesn't look that steep, but you go into the driver view and, oh, that's a slide from Milan Meyer there. Bit car damage. But yeah, it's in the same way that you look at tracks top down, or like maybe in a simulation, and then you look at them in real life to see just how big they are. Crazy.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, I remember once driving a lap at the Portimao track, and you were driving uphill, and there was an instructor next to me, and he said, okay, now you brake and turn left. And you're going uphill, and you're like, I don't see a corner. So your brake, the first time, it short circuits. You have no idea what you're doing. And similar things you can happen here when you drive uphill. Perhaps not too much here, because you're more going downhill, not so much uphill where you have to do braking. But you're going to see similar things next week when we're going to go to Spa. If you go up through Radion or Rouge, you will notice that same effect, because you can't see the corner. You just have to know where to steer and hope it goes well.
You just have to commit, you have to find your line, and you have to know in advance, okay, this is the amount of speed I can take, this is how deep I can cut it. And we've seen a lot of people find that quite quickly, because a lot of drivers have had their laps invalidated for track limits. Rad Sprogis coming across the line though, 13.2, and we are seeing that time very quickly come down. Good early statement from the Haas driver, and a few more coming through. So Dimas coming through in P5. And the second Red Bull, I believe that's Ben Marples, is about to be coming through, and that is going to be an invalidation, unfortunately, for him. So, interesting position to be in, where everyone's outlaps have mostly been invalidated.
Well, as we mentioned before, track limits are such a key here. The easiest, as mentioned before, turn 9, Piratella. If we're now looking at Kilian Racek, this is the corner that we mean. This is Piratella. It's easy to go outside the white line, and once you cross that, you will invalidate. Another turn where you could perhaps invalidate is through the second Rivata, so your final corner, although that doesn't happen that very often, unless you, of course, mess up the exit here. But the drivers here are more experienced, should be experienced enough not to see that happen. So I think most of the track limits will happen at turn 9.
Yeah, I'd say track limits, as say turn 9, and looking around, I think that is where most drivers are making their mistakes. And Aqua Minerale as well, seen people have a couple of misjudgments, haven't always got it right. It's a very difficult corner in terms of balancing your car, because you can very easily get on throttle at the heat of the divot, and all of a sudden your rear end is facing the forwards.
It is a very, very difficult corner to take already in the dry, and since we're going to see some rain in the race, it's even more difficult then. I mean, Piratella becomes slightly easier because you're going to take less risks, so track limits won't really happen. But through there, very, very difficult corner. So we're going to see some, or perhaps some mistakes down to Aqua Minerale in the race. But for now, let's hope we don't see too many. Although we saw at the end of Aqua Minerale, Jeremy went off slightly in his fast lap. That's why he said a 1:15.1, so not really the fast banker lap yet. But I think most of the drivers have gone out at this moment already, as Leo Lund has left the session, so I hope he'll be able to get back. But so far only 10 drivers with the lap, even though we have 19 drivers in.
Yeah, and I think Jeremy has done the right thing here and finished his lap, even if it isn't on pace. Sven Schumacher with the P6, but crucially, Jeremy, despite having a 15.1 being generally over a second off pace to the rest of the field, he's still in P11 because no one else has got their banker laps in of that second half of the field. So that is a massive advantage, at least on the mental game, because you're sitting in a good position and you have a safety net so that if anything goes wrong during your prime lap, then you can at least find some solace in the fact that you've got a lap to fall back on. Even if it isn't optimal, it's still something.
That is very true. And in the meantime, I'm spectating Andrew Karapi, who is now approaching the final sector. So far, 49.0 as he goes through sector 2. He will now just have to face the Rivazas before finishing off his lap. He is one of the drivers that has not set a lap time yet, currently in 12th position. And as we see him go through the final corner, tackling that final Rivazza, no track limits for him, but how quick can he be? He is going to set a banker of a 1:13.9, which currently puts him only one place up, P11.
But it's still a time on the board. So 7 drivers have yet to set a time. 6 times if you disinclude Leo Lund. Hopefully he gets the chance to reconnect for at least the race. Although he is probably going to have the tough position of starting from the back, which is unfortunate. Sometimes that's just how it goes. Willem across the line now is going to be a 14.1 and is going to be a time that he will need to improve if he wants a competitive result. But as we say, this is where the banker lap is a bit of stability. And Simone Viola, he already had track limits, but you see there the dangers of overextending, whether that's a little bit on the gravel or just losing the rear, getting a little bit more power out than you otherwise expected.
And in the meantime, Arda Gune is a little bit quicker, does not improve position, but does improve his lap time, so that's very good. Another thing that is very interesting to note here, if you go through turn 19, even though it's not really a turn, they do call it turn, it's turn 19, but if a lot of the drivers, as you can see, they go very close to the wall. That is, of course, the shortest line and will get you the fastest lap. However, if you are too far to the right and go outside of the track borders, outside of the white line, you can still get track limits, even though it's like 30 meters in front of the start-finish straight. I don't think any of the drivers is going to be caught off guard by that, but keep in mind, it is possible.
Yeah, so that is generally where you want to set your own personal 2-tire rule. Is just don't overdo it. You can survive without 17 milliseconds by taking that little extra extend. That you will be fine. At that point, if you've got that good of a lap, just bring it home, play it a little safer, because there's nothing more painful than having a really good lap and then having it sacrificed. As you see, Noel Carman coming in with a 1:13.719. So good run there. I believe there is another AlphaTauri who is coming through. That is going to be Jeremy. So he's going to be starting a lap, but Dimas coming through with a 13.249 in that Red Bull to take a very strong pole position. I wonder if anyone is going to answer, as we have a few more cars coming through, but no one seems to have an affirmative answer.
Yeah, Sproga's just going into the pits. In the first sector was almost half a tenth up, then lost about a tenth in the second sector, and in the last Rivazza he almost lost it, so he immediately goes into the pits. But looks like Sprogas can do a little bit quicker, and if he can continue that lap with the great first sector that he just did, he should be able to pip Alexander Dimas when he goes for his final run. But a great improvement from Alexander Dimas. Quite a few tenths, I think 3 tenths, that he was quicker now. That puts him up in front. Very good lap.
Yeah, really just found the pace there, and a really good job from him too. So Sprogis, I believe, definitely has the pace to challenge, if not surpass, Dimas. But I think also Dimas, on that logic, can extract a little bit more. Just have that lap a tiny bit more optimized. Santa Maria has come across with 13.8. Ben Marples is 5 milliseconds ahead. But what can Jeremy do? He needs to improve. And boy, does he! He's going to go a 100th of a second quicker than Dimas and Sprogis, throwing the total wildcard. AlphaTauri takes it to pole.
And in the meantime, Lillian in the other AlphaTauris on a fast lap was 400ths quicker in the first sector as he now goes through Piratel. Don't pick up track limits. He does not. Seems to be very fast. Not any mistakes I've noticed so far. Aqua Minerale also looks very smooth. He's now going to approach the end of sector 2. Currently almost 2 tenths quicker. He is on board for a pole lap. Doesn't ruin it there. Slight error when he comes to the very end of the Alta, but doesn't lose too much time. Purple sector 2 as well. That was a flyer as he now comes through the final 2 sectors. Rivazza, very close to getting track limits. Not too close on the exit. This might be enough for pole. This might be enough for pole, and he does so far with 13.1.
157. If that's not a statement, I don't know what is. AlphaTauri 1-2. Lillian is back, and they are saying, did you miss me? Did you miss me? Because they are right back on top and mirroring that crazy performance we saw at the start of the season, that crazy statement. And I don't know how the other drivers are going to respond. We have a few we're keeping our eye on. Harry, and again, Reserve, doing an amazing job jumping up into P5. And then we have a few more drivers who are going to be coming through and making some improvements. I think everyone's setting up for a final run here. The track has noticeably got a lot more overcast, which should be of some concern to the likes of Karapi and Maya.
Yeah, so far only Karapi on a fast lap. Sven Schumacher was already 9 tenths down in his first sector. And this is track limits as well for Andrew Karapi, so he'll have to back off. The question is, does he have enough time? There's still 3 minute 10, so I think if he gets to the pits, he should have enough time to go for an all and final lap. I think most of the drivers will now be coming out to try and make their final lap. Riot Sprogis is out, as well Balindelekes, Noah Karlman, Sixten Linhart, and Ben Marples are out, as well as Taz, who are now going to be setting up their pace for a final lap. And I'm very curious to see what Riot Sprogis can do, because I think he's now on his lap, as he is.
Sprogis is going to be one that we will jump on. We're just on board with Simone Violo here for the moment, and you can see he's putting on a very good showing, really picking up on the pace there, but he does go on track limits through Aqua Minerale, so he is going to have to abandon. And Sprogis also getting track limits despite being almost a 10th up just through the first sector alone. That looked like such a good run, and it's a shame that they are going to have to abandon. They're going to have to recover very quickly if they want to get a second chance, because they can't go back in the pits now. Too late.
I don't think he can, but he's still pushing for it. So, almost spins it there through Aqua Minerale. I think the best thing he can do now is just save a little bit, but he might not have enough fuel to go for an extra lap. So, I think he'll try to go in and go for an extra lap, but he still has about 20-30 seconds to go in. Then there is some time for the mechanics to do something. He does not have time. Rios Progress will not be able to improve, so he is not going to get pole position. So I think the fight is going to be, well, I think Marek Znamorowski and Harry also have a chance here, perhaps Sven Schumacher as well, but I think the real fight is going to be between Alexander Dimas, Jeremy, and Lillian. So the two AlphaTauris and the Red Bull, all Honda engines.
Yeah, some of these drivers are absolutely crazy when it comes to pace. I know the track has cooled down a little bit, so that might be a small factor. Some of these drivers' performances. Unfortunate that Andrew Karapi got track limits because they were otherwise looking on a good run. Odagune going to be another driver to quit out. Simone Violo is going to quit out as well after their track limits at Aqua Minerale. They've also decided, yep, not worth it. Can't do anything here, unfortunately. And then Sprogis is going to head into the pits. I'm not sure if they're going to go for a last-minute run, a last-minute dive, but Jeremy is just starting out their main lap here and looking very pacey in the process. Tiny improvements, but these add up if you can keep it through sectors.
Yeah, he's now gone 18 thousandths quicker as he approaches Piratella, but Sector 2 so far seems to be the sector where you can gain a lot of time. Does swing by fairly quickly to the left-hander. Now, Camino Raleigh goes a little bit too wide, does not pick up track limits, but I think this will impact his lap time a little bit. He's indeed now 900 slower. Still some time to gain the fight. That's track limits, not it for Jeremy. So no pole position for him. I think the main fight will be between Alexander Dimas and Lillian. And Alexander Dimas, 73 thousandths up in Sector 1.
Just need to keep it together through the second sector. If they can get it past at this point, they could potentially bring it home. This is looking very good for Alexander Dimas. He's really got some good momentum here. It's a purple second sector. It could make this work. The other drivers have so far failed. Sprogis made a mistake. Jeremy, he's out of it. Second, Ravazza is going to be the tell. He's got the momentum. He's going to push it through. Is it going to be pole position? This is it. This is it. 13.092. Can Lillian make a challenge on it? No, it looks like they're half a tenth down. I don't think they'll be able to make it. They can't make that much time in that last sector. I think Dimas has it.
Lillian will have to gain a 10 through that final sector, but did already... Nah, slight mistake to the first. Rivazza really is pushing it. I think Lillian will have to settle for second. Does come awfully close, but a 13.3 is not enough. And with all the drivers except for Andrew Karapi now facing the finish line, Andrew Karapi is backed off. Alexander Dimas is pulled just like you predicted. Lillian's in second, and Jeremy comes in third. Only 1,000 quicker than Sven Schumacher, who put in a flyer as well. And his turn is another 1,000 quicker than Marek Znaborowski. 3, 4, and 5, only 2,000ths of a second apart.
We have 3 drivers within a single millisecond of one another. When do you see that? Honestly, when do you see that? You just don't. You just don't. But to look through the final order here, folks, Alexander Dimas with an absolute corker of a lap really brought it together to take the pole position here in Imola. And we have a brilliant performance from everyone else as well. So, for instance, we have Lillian and Jeremy making it P2 and P3 for AlphaTauri. Sven Schumacher are going to be P4 with Marek Zamorowski, Ryle Sprogis, Harry, Ben Marples, Simone Violo, Ardagune, and Milan Meyer starting out the next 10 with Racek, Corne de Backer, Valentelekas, Noel Coleman, Sixten Linhart, Abraham Santamaria, Andrew Karapi, and unfortunately Leo Lund is going to be sitting this one at the back of the field. So we are just going to be jumping straight into things, folks. And indeed, it is wet. It is a wet race, which makes me wonder how Dimas would fare, because he had a great pace, but did he go for dry setup for that pole start?
Yeah, one has to wonder how much they took the track conditions into consideration, but you can see there's puddles on the track. This definitely is wet weather conditions, so I don't think any of the drivers will be starting on the intermediates. You will start on the wets. And of course, where perhaps in the real world you would get a safety car start, that does not apply to F123. We will see the standing start, and oh boy, am I curious to see what's going to happen in turn 1. Because going through Variante Tamburello, chicane section like that, in the rain, this heavy rain, with standing water, oof. I hope they all get through, all 19 get through safely, but I fear for this.
We're lucky that with modern tracks, a lot of work has gone into how water is directed, so we don't get a lot of cases of dangerous standing water, but the water is still a hazard. Of course, these drivers have had practice with controlling their cars in the dry, but in the wet, it's a completely different ballgame. Particularly more aggressive driving styles really tend to struggle, because looking for that limit and then backing off doesn't work, because as soon as you find that limit, you are out of control.
And another thing that drivers have to take into consideration is that the curbs are going to be they're going to be wet, so the grip over there is pretty much non-existent. So you'll have to fare away from the grips, from from the curbs a little bit in order to maintain grip. And the corner that makes that very difficult is the Variante Alta, so just at the start of Sector 3, because it's very easy to spin there as the lights come on! And the lights go off very quickly, and it looks like Alexander Dimas is the best start. And he seems to be keeping it up for the time being. All drivers are well underway. The McLaren of Andrew Karapi has gone by quite well. A lot of drivers going through the grid. A crash over in corner 1. One of the AlphaTauris was involved there. Aragune is retired from the session already. A big shunt over in the first corner. And we have a safety car already? The drivers are driving slow. We have one, right?
That is an immediate safety car. Yeah, Aragune lost one of their wheels, so they immediately got taken out of the action. They had no choice but to retire. But yeah, that was a 5-6 second, 6 seconds of just madness. You had multiple cars making contact. I believe a Haas and an Alfa Romeo both went careening into the gravel. Whether that was outbraking themselves or contact was made, we couldn't tell. There was just too much going on in those 5-10 seconds. And we have the end result, which is Corneda Backer missing a front wing, quite a few drivers missing end plates, and yellow flags coming out very quickly. In fact, it's not a safety car, but...
Wait, what?
We are going to see that a lot of drivers are probably going to have to pit in for damage one way or another. Be that end plates, front wings entirely, or we will see.
Well, it looked like we haven't had a safety car because the drivers were going so slow, but perhaps it was just a virtual safety car then, because we have now resumed racing. And in the meantime, we can see that Richard Sprogus has got an amazing start. He's 3 positions up, 6 positions for Noel Karlman, and also 5 positions for Leo Lund, as we see Corneda Backer go in for his pits. The other drivers seem to be staying. No, it's also Andrew Karapi who's going to come into the pit. So these 2 drivers have a bit of damage. We saw Lillian go a little bit wide into the first corner, and immediately Richard Sprogus is hot on their tail, trying to go around outside of Variante Field now. This is not a place where you want to go for an overtake, but he makes it stick. He takes over 2nd place. It looks like Jeremy and Sven Schumacher have gone by the outside as well. So Lillian losing 3 places in a matter of 1 corner.
Jeremy is going to be backing off very quickly. He's going to be making a mistake and having no choice but to drop down to P6. You can see just how slow some of these corners have to be taken with these guys, and so many people overextending just before. Yeah, I say just before and heading into Aqua Minerale. So many drivers are overextending just where there's so little grip. This is full wet conditions. This is not inters.
Indeed, if we look at the track for now, it's definitely full wet. But what is interesting to see, as the race is going to progress, I think at some point we'll likely be able to switch to intermediates for only a lap 2 out of the 32 complete laps that we'll be doing. Do you have any idea around about what the cutoff time is on this track? Because I'm not entirely sure. I think it's somewhere in the early 20s that we should be looking at. Sandro Dima is now doing a 128. I think the drivers will need to improve a couple of seconds before we want to switch to inters. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the cutoff point is definitely when you start to see either A, your track, your tyre surface temps skyrocketing, because remember that even if they are designed to be more hard-wearing and displace more water, these are, in fact, I believe, softer than the soft compounds. This is the equivalent of if you took the old spec with the hyper soft, super softs. This is if you took that in terms of how durable the compound is. So you have these tyres rapidly spiking in temperature, and that's usually your cue to say, all right, there's not enough water on the track for these tyres to be viable. Look at switching to inters, or even just lifting and coasting a little bit more. And we see Jeremy is going to lose the rear of the car. He's going to be ghosting out on the apex of Aqua Minerale and is going to lose even more positions. That's him all the way down in P13.
That's just such a shame. Had an amazing qualifying session and has now really dropped back down the order. Let's see if he has any damage that we can see. It looks like all the wing end plates are still in place, so thankfully no damage for him. Although, of course, the tires will have taken a beating there, but now dropped outside the points. This is not what we were hoping for him. And in the meantime, Riyad Sprogus in the fastest lap time with a 1:27.7. So he seems to be slightly quicker than Alexander Dimas, but the gap's still 1.1 seconds. So still quite some time to go. And remember, overtaking in the wet is going to be much, much more difficult. We won't see any DRS for quite some time, perhaps not for the entire race. We'll have to see how everything progresses. As soon as we see a dry line start to emerge, then we are heading for closer intermediates. But I think we see the conditions for now. The next 5 or 10 laps will still be driving in the wet tires.
Yeah, patience is, I think, the name of the game here, as everyone is pushing, vying for track position, but as we saw just there with Ben Marples, goes a little bit deep, loses the rear, and negates any gap they would have otherwise had to Marek, despite getting round him. So this is really the game of patience. It's about understanding that you are in a very precarious situation. As elite as these racing machines are, these machines do have their limits all the same. And the wets make that very, very apparent. Sven Schumacher is getting very close to the back of Riyad Sprogus, and we can see that he is saying to those limits, he's gonna try them a little, and he's gonna try the limits of his opponent. As Sprogus, eager to get out of the corners, we see him even snapping the throttle a little bit on the rear.
It was actually very interesting to know. I just checked what tires the drivers were on, but we actually have 2 drivers that are driving on the intermediate compound. You see Kilian Racek and Leo Lund, position 14-15 on the inters, as we now see Jeremy come into the pits. And yeah, more drivers are going to switch for inters. Lillian is switched for inters. Sixten Lindhart and Noel Carlman is switched for inters. And I can only imagine, yeah, Jeremy's also going to be switching for inters. Did we reach our cutoff time already? Because we did see Kilian Racek as decrease his lead to the leader. It was about 33.6. It's now 33.1. It's now rapidly decreasing. I think the time for wets is over. I think we have to switch, and we did have a fastest lap time now for Leo Lund at 1:27.3. So a couple of tenths quicker now for the intermediates. And how good of a call was Lillian's decision to make a pit stop already? Are Alexander Dimas and Riyad Sprogus already too late? Sven Schumacher as well. They're so close up front, but they'll have to come in now. The inters are quicker.
Yeah, the inters are indeed quicker, but it's a game of track position, as Sven Schumacher and Riyad Sprogus are going to be playing that kind of game. And in fact, Riyad Sprogus, I think, didn't have enough space there and was given a 3-second time penalty for track warnings. Not sure if that is going to be contested, because it looked to me that Sven Schumacher kind of didn't give anywhere for that Haas to go. But either way, yes, this is where a lot of drivers need to make that judgment call. Dimas heads into the pits. Sprogus heads into the pits. A few more drivers are going to be following suit, I believe. So they're seeing the timing board light up with the likes of Lund and Simone Violo. A little bit too hasty with that 5-second penalty to get into the pits. But everyone is quick to jump on those inters, because full wets are extreme conditions. The sooner you can get onto those inters, the better. The only drawback is if the rain picks up again, or if you potentially have to make an extra stop due to your timings.
And we're going to see a tussle for the lead. It's actually Lillian who's taken over the lead by stopping 1 lap earlier. I was a bit surprised why Sven Schumacher didn't go in, and this really does show how much quicker the inters are. Remember, I was saying the gap, 31.6, about a lap and a half ago between Kilian Racek and our race leader. Of course, now we have a different race leader, but it's now 29.3. Sven Schumacher is about 1.5 behind, so they have decreased the lap by about 6-7 tenths. The intermediates, at this point, 5 to 6 tenths a lap quicker. And it shows because Lillian, now in the lead, about a second ahead of Alexander Dimas. Sven Schumacher, when he's going to come in at the end of this lap, presumably, is going to lose quite a few places. And I think we might find him back even behind Kilian Racek, and maybe even behind Carlin. Yeah. Oh, a very, very good swipe at Sven Schumacher, but he holds it down to Rivazza.
Yeah, the controlled slide is your best friend when it comes to conditions like this. Sometimes you can catch it, and that is a 5 seconds for Sven Schumacher as well, just speeding in the pit lane there. But he is going to come out significantly behind. You've got so many other drivers who have made a really good call to switch onto the inters earlier. And even in that last lap, while you were talking through that segment, just that segment, about half to 2/3 of a lap, Lillian made up 1.5 seconds, and you can see there with a 1:26.5, an absolutely blistering time. It is pretty clear where the pace lies. And Sven Schumacher, along with Ben Marples, are going to be coming out much further back in this order.
We see Alexander Dimas pushing very, very hard as we have a yellow in Sector 3. That's one of the Ferraris driving very, very slowly. Is that Cornet?
That is Cornet de Backer losing it in the first Ravazza.
And he's going to come in straight away as well. I think he has some damage onto the sides. Also picking up penalty for speeding in the pit. A lot of drivers actually picked it up, and he's now retired from the session. So I think he no longer has faith in it. In the meantime, if we look at the penalties, we have a 3-second time penalty for Harry, currently in second. Although he still needs to switch to the intermediate tires. 3 seconds for Riot Sprogus, 5 seconds for Sven Schumacher, 3 seconds for Leolund, and also 5 seconds for Simone Viola, who's now overtaken Leolund on track for P14.
Yeah, regardless of your penalties, you still want to put out your best performance on track. There's no point giving up, and you never know what kind of time that you can make up by just giving it that oomph and maybe negating some of your penalty in that regard. So these two are going to continue to fight. I think Leolund has done an extremely good job of making up some time. He's certainly done a good job of that. And with some of the earlier chaos in the fields, that has been vital. As Rashek is going to be another driver to pick up penalties. Harry and Milamai head into the pits. And then you have just 2 cars left. You can see a big slide from Simone Violo. Santa Maria and Zamorowski are the only drivers at the front, alongside Alekes and P16, on the full wet tyres. But surely they've seen the writing is on the wall for them, as Lillian is only 5 seconds behind, and that is dropping by about a 10th every second or so.
Yeah, at this point on the wets, you're at least 1.5 seconds slower. If it's not already 2 seconds, the wet tire is really dropping off fast now. I'm not sure why the drivers are continuing so long. Perhaps they want to extend their stint, so maybe they don't have to make an extra stop when they're going to go to inters, or perhaps even to dries later on. Although at this point, it definitely doesn't look like that. But at this point, you're losing way too much time. You have to come in for your pits. You have to stop for the inters, because let's be real, it was time for inters 4 laps ago, even though most of us didn't know it. But about 3 laps ago, we knew it. And our race leader, Marek Znamorovsky, is going to come in. So we currently keep our eyes on task. But look at that. His gap to Lillian was 5 seconds when we crossed start-finish line. It is now 2.1 seconds. And he continues.
Stays out. And yet he stays out. I'm not sure what the strategy is here. Maybe they're banking to get on dries as soon as the track gets much drier, but I have to question that strategy somewhat, because the time you're losing right now, as Marples has just crossed into the Magic 25s, surely the time you're losing is no longer worth it.
It can't be. The track is still way too wet. I think if you even want to risk it for some dry weather compounds, the tire you're going to have the most grip on is the softer compound, and you are not going to be able to make that last all the way to the end. So I'm not entirely sure what their strategy is here. Perhaps the race engineers have some magic to play that we don't know of. Perhaps they have a master strategist at their I don't know who that would be for Aston Martin. I keep forgetting the name of the strategist of Red Bull, the famous strategist. What's her name again?
I think regardless of, say, the strategy and the strategic personnel, it hasn't worked out for Santa Maria because Lillian has caught up. And keep in mind, Lillian has taken a pit stop. And this is just a show of the pace of inters. The fact that Santa Maria, no stop, full wets, has been passed by Lillian, who has taken a pit stop. So that's about 30 seconds of track time. And there we go. I think that's as strong a signal as any that Santa Maria is heading into the pits. And a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. It's going to add a little bit of insult to injury, but they are going to be coming out well behind the rest of the field, which leaves us to look at Riot Sprogis. Oh, that is a yellow in Sector 3, though. Not sure who that is for. Oh, that looks to be Balint Elekes. Looks like they lost it in that 3rd sector.
At the moment, the track all clear again as we are on board with Riot Sprogis, only 5 tenths behind Alexander Dimas, who is in P2. But also for P4, there's quite a fight between Ben Marples and Sven Schumacher. It's quite close here up on front, although Lillian has a smooth 2-second lead over Alexander Dimas as Riot Sprogis now heads into the Piratella. Remember, the curbs you want to stay away from, especially here in Aqua Minerale. We know how dangerous it is. You really can't take too many risks, and we see the drivers take a lot less speed through, as of course you would do in the dry settings here. So we're now approaching the Variante Alta, where again you have to be careful with the. We have an accident. Jeremy's out, and we have a safety car.
Yep, that is full safety, and that is going to be... we can see that Jeremy has crashed it out in the middle of the circuit. His car is marooned right before Aqua Minerale. So that is a full core. That is a full core safety car, and now everyone is going to be lining up together, ready for a restart. Yeah, just this is what we mean. Curbs, pushing the car too hard. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see what actually happened, but one thing we do know for sure is that taking risks and over pushing the car is a death sentence, and Jeremy unfortunately must have lost the car coming down to Aqua Minerale, just a bit too much throttle. It looks like they had a spin before losing, well, one of their wheels and having to retire from the race.
Yeah, it was through Piratella where Jeremy lost it, and then he hit the wall and he crashed out the car there. I think he probably just went a little bit too wide. Car flew back to the left and then hit the wall and had quite some damage there. We also see that quite a few drivers have gone for a pit stop, most notably Riots Progress. He's given up 3 positions with that pit stop, but he was on 4 lap hole tires. He now has a fresh set of intermediates, so he can continue. But all the drivers behind him not really losing any positions here, and they're now going to be on fresh set of tires. Also, Balandelek is coming in, must be for the intermediates as well. Was the only driver still driving on the wet tires, but because of that, we now see that the drivers that stopped a little bit later and well also come in now, they will have the fresher tires. And Lillian on 6 lap old intermediates already. When we are going to resume and this weather continues, they might have made a great call. So the idea here to make a pit stop under the safety car, you are of course going to concede some track position, but I think in the long run this is quite an interesting call and perhaps a really good one.
And I think the strategy from here is, from Sprogus' perspective, he's seen the safety car. He knows that under the safety car he's going to lose the least amount of time and track position. P6 is a good place to come out after a pit, and the track is going to be condensed in terms of field spread anyway. So, fresh inters, I honestly believe that he will try and take these to the end.
And in the meantime, we see Taz coming in as well. He is only on 1 lap old tire, so I'm not entirely sure why he comes in. Unless he goes for... It's a new set of inters. Ah, he has damage. Or no, it's for the penalty. Yeah, it's for the penalty. So he's going to make sure that the penalty is undone now, so that does make sense. So he is going to concede a bit of track position, dropping from 17 to 14. But he won't have those 5-second penalties, because if there is another late safety car, that could have implications for him at the end. So perhaps better to get that penalty out of the way. So he has now gotten that sorted, because remember, Riots Progress still has that 3-second time penalty. So with this daring strategy, might be able to stick it up front. If he doesn't get a 3-second gap, it might not be enough to claim victory here tonight.
Yes, that is the crucial factor, is this strategy could be good, but could it be 3 seconds delta good? That's the question we've got to ask. And depending on how these next few laps go, because the safety car should be pulled in either this or next lap, we'll have to see how it goes and how this whole unique strategy is going to play out. Field is looking very, very condensed now. Everyone's had a chance to catch up. Santa Maria, Carapi, and Alekis have all got to catch up still, but they have still got time, as it seems to be the case that pretty much everyone is looking for any kind of sway on their opponents. But they have one more lap to condense, to group together, and my eyes are going to be on Dimas, because how Dimas responds to this race start, of course Lillian has control of the race restart, but how Dimas responds could really set a lot of track changes in motion.
That for sure is true, but what we should also keep in mind is that Milan Meyer, who didn't have the best source of qualifying, has now made up 6 positions in 5th place. And Marple's currently 3rd, also made up 5 positions. 8 positions made up by Noah Carman in 7th, and 6 and Lindhard made up 7 positions. But I think he's also one of the stoppers that just went for the new set of inters. Let me just check that. That is correct indeed. So he also has the advantage with that. And yeah, Milan Meyer doing quite good so far. He will have to pick up some points if he wants to make sure that he doesn't fall away too far when it comes to the championship fight. And so far as it stands, Lillian and Alexander Dimas, of course, doing the best job in that sense. But the drivers that have gone for the stop, so Rietz Progress, Noel Coleman, Sven Schumacher, Sixten Lindhard, Kylian Racek, Hari, Simone Violo, Leo Lund, and yeah, pretty much everyone else behind, they are ready to pounce. So I think we're going to see a very interesting restart with a lot of tussling in the first lap. Perhaps not the first set of quarters at Tamburello, but definitely later on, perhaps into Tulsa.
I believe that we will definitely see a little bit of a power struggle, if not at the start, then definitely down the line as those inters start to age. Inters generally have very unique properties when it comes to keeping the grip, especially if the track is starting to dry. As we saw that almost very strange phenomenon with Esteban Ocon not too long ago, the inters, as the track gets drier, kind of form into a pseudo-dry compound as the grip of the tread wears away, and of course that tread thins. You get these pseudo-dry tyres that are not too dissimilar to a soft or a medium. It's really bizarre, and I have to wonder if drivers here are looking to pull off a similar kind of deal. But we're about to get to the race restart, and all eyes are on our top 2.
It looked like Lillian already went very early just before the first Rafazza, but I think what he's going to do is go very late. I believe we saw Max do this a couple of years ago, and he starts just before the start-finish line, and that gives him a pretty decent run. Not a lot of drivers are close, although I think in the back, the Aston Martins were battling already a little bit. Leo Lund's already made up a position, and I think that's where Sproga is already on the inside of Milan Meyer, but he does not make that overtake stick for now. Now Racek has picked up a position. Simone Violo again, another one. Leo Lund has already made up 3 positions in this restart. What an amazing start from him. And Harry's dropped down the order a little bit, so I think a mistake from his end.
In the top half, you got Royal Spragues, who's going to continue that fight against Milan Meyer. They made a little bit of contact, but it is going to be held together quite nicely. And big snap from one of the cars is forcing Noel Coleman to go very wide. Sven Schumacher is going to slot themselves right in, and all of a sudden the Haas and the Alfa Romeo are in very close proximity. Spragues is forced to go wide. Sven Schumacher is going to assert themselves up into P6 through Acquarelli now, and it looks like Spragues, for whatever reason, is struggling. They've dropped down the field. They've made a little bit of a movement up, but they seemingly just can't find that momentum. And a gap has actually built quite substantially between himself and Meyer. He's trading places with Schumacher, but it's not materializing into a meaningful leap forward that he may have envisioned when he went for this second pit.
At the time being, it's not playing dividends yet. Perhaps when he gets those tires a little bit more warmed up, if he gets the feel of these new set of inters, perhaps he'll go a little bit better. But what I'm also very curious about is the fight up front. In second and third, we have both of our Red Bulls. Van Marple so far picked up 6 points in this championship. Alexander Dimas, our championship leader. Are we going to see any team calls here? Any team orders to make sure that Alexander Dimas gets the most points? Are these drivers allowed to race freely? That's what I'm curious about.
Well, we've seen them cooperate before. Certainly seen that Marples has helped out Dimas on a couple occasions, and likewise, Dimas, if he knows he's in a tough spot, Marples could gain. We've seen some cooperation from these two drivers for sure. Whether there is to the extent of team orders, I highly doubt, because at the end of the day, in a league like PSGL, you are racing as a driver first and foremost. The team element doesn't play as deep a role. It does as you go further up the divisions, where you go into, say, driver development academies, esports, juniors, and looking up at the ranks of F3, F2, and in fact we see the opposite as Ben Marples is going to be getting himself around Dimas. Maybe they're trying something here with Marples being on 1 lap softer inters. I already see a gap has been formed.
Yeah, we saw Alexander Dimas did not have the greatest exit outside of the Aqua Minerale, so immediately moved to the side so he could let Ben Marples through. So it looks like they're at least helping each out a little bit, each other, and making sure that they're not going to cost each other that much time. But because of that, Marek Snaborowski is now really, really close to Alexander Dimas. He wants to go for an overtake, but he'll have to go around the outside of Tamburello. Brings very late. Can he make it stick? Does he keep it on track? He doesn't. Alexander Dimas has been overtaken twice now, but comes back around the outside and now into Villeneuve. He is on the outside, but he makes it stick by braking a little bit later. And now into Tosa, we're going to see another overtake around the outside by Marek Snaborowski. Oh, Alexander Dimas was wide. That's in contact.
And that's almost 3-4 abreast. That's almost 3-4 abreast. He's pushed through, and this gaggle of cars has completely inverted. So Sproger's P3, Sven Schumacher in P4. That we kind of expected, but Dimas and Zamorowski are having a right battle to the point where we're even seeing a few guys extend off track. Milan Meyer dropping all the way down as a result of the battles we saw a bit further down the field. You can even see Marek versus Coleman. Coleman has to go wide because that Marek doesn't give him the room. But you can see, oh, big snap! That's the Alpine pushing the Mercedes into the grass, losing control. They're banging tyres, and the Mercedes is round. Coleman is completely round, as is Marek.
This is so unfortunate, but we see so much close fighting. All the drivers are so close, whereas Sprogus now sets the fastest lap time with a 1:25.1. He now has to make up time towards Ben Marples, and Ben Marples is very, very close to Lillian, only 2/10 behind. Sort of a gap are starting to emerge behind Alexander Dimas is, well, what you could say no man's land. Marek Snaborowski is retired from the session, also picking up a penalty for speeding in the pit lane, so he's going to see that as an end. He did select the medium compound there, so that is interesting. So far, we still have rain, as a dry line slowly starting to emerge, but I think it is still too early for any of the drivers to take risks. But if we look at the pack, who can really make that risk first? And with the gaps being oh so close, because of that safety car, I don't really know who wants to take that risk first. As you see, I think that was Harry went a little bit wide to Piratella, so picking up another warning there for track limits. So Carmen has gone into a fight with Balanilakis all the way down at the back. I think we have to move up front because Lillian, Ben Marples, Riyad Sprogus are all within half a second, and with Sven Schumacher, our top four within a second of one another. This is so close.
We are seeing how much these drivers are willing to bear the teeth. Sprogus has just got through, and between the two Ravazzas, he's just managed to sneak his way past that Red Bull. He's going to be up into P2, and Sistin Lidhart is going to be setting the fastest lap. The Haas driver is aiming to be on an absolute crusade. He had a bit of an iffy start coming off the safety car, but he's really found his feet. He's bared the teeth. He's going full aggression. He's going all the way to the inside. He's not going to get that run, though, and he is going to have to bide his time a little bit more as Dimas is dropping down the field. He's now in P6.
I think Dimas' laps are slowly starting to give way, and I think Lillian is going to face a similar thing, but do you really want to make a pit stop now? You can't tell at this point how long we'll have to wait until we can switch to the dry set of compounds, but it's definitely clear that the drivers that made the decision to pit under the safety car have the fresher tires and have more grip and have made the better call, at least for the time being. Although Lillian, of course, still holding that lead here. But I think we might see another attack down to Ravazza. We saw Riyad Sprogus going for the overtake last lap into the first Ravazza around the outside. It looks like he wants to do the same side by side as they're making their way up into the first Ravazza. And he's already gotten it. He can brake so much later, almost overshoots there. I think he just has enough of a gap to make that stick. And now Ben Marples immediately close by, trying to go for an overtake as well. Lillian really having to look in his rearview mirrors, and it's Sven Schumacher on the other hand who wants to go by Ben Marples. He is going to try and go dive down the inside. Will that make it? Will he make it work? No, not yet. Not yet.
That's crazy. See the amount of close running these drivers are having. And even weirder enough, we're seeing that Dimas, he might have got a bit of angle, and bit of angle is an understatement. That is going to be him and Karapi round. They're both going to be dropping right down to the bottom of the field. So what once was our top runner is now slap bang straight down to the bottom. As we see at the top of the field, it's a drag race between Marples and Schumacher. And Marples is going to have to yield, but drops even further than that, as Leo Lund is going to be maybe teeing up a move hiding into Aqua Minerale. No, he plays it safe. He chooses life in this instance, and he's going to be biding his time. We're seeing drivers really start to get impatient, I think. We're going for moves that we don't usually see in the wet, and while they are working out a lot of times, you do want to avoid having a high level of risk, high risk moves, because the wet only exacerbates any issues you might have with the car.
And what's also notably that we can see here is that Sixten Linhart so far has about the best pace out of all the drivers on track, made his way all the way up into 4th position, doing really, really well. As I think Sven Schumacher wants to go for an overtake round the outside of Lillian. Remember, 6-lap fresher tires. He can brake a little bit later, he does brake later, and he does make it stick. He makes it round Tamburello, and now Sixten Linhart will want to go for an overtake straight as well. Was looking at the inside, does not want to go for a full move, perhaps into Tulsa. He can do something more. He's going to try, and he was looking for it. But we see that Lillian did not get the best exit here. Sixten Linhart's drifting a little bit, coming out of the outside, but he just has so much more grip. He's going to stick it around the inside in Piratella, and he's now up in 3rd. He's having an amazing race so far, and now 3 of the runners that went for a pits in the safety car session are now in our top 3.
Yeah, that, what we first called a little bit unorthodox call, has blossomed into a brilliant performance in this latter section of the race. As we can see that Raul Spragus has not only got the run, but got 1.5 seconds to his next driver, Sven Schumacher. Now, the gap could close, it could go either way. It looks to be stabilizing around that 1.5 seconds, which is a problem, Spragus, because as it stands, he will put himself still into P5 with this current setup. But the crucial thing is, as we see Milan Meyer find some pace, Noel Carlman find even more pace, driver on a mission after their initial scuffles with some of the other runners. We see Leoland going into P5, maybe going a little bit deep as Ben Marples is going to try and give it a bit of a return to sender, trying to get it back around the outside, and is going to be that McLaren playing it a little safer in order to get a better exit. Round the outside now, they could be looking for a move, but they got Simone Violo very anxiously waiting, hoping that nothing goes wrong between these drivers because they're running in such close proximity, and we almost saw 3-4 abreast at one point. We don't want to see what happens if that goes sideways.
We definitely don't, and as I was just talking about Sixten Linhart, we really do have to give a shout out to him. He's one of our reserve drivers. He started in P16 at the start of this race, now all the way up into P3 and battling for P2. He is doing an amazing job here in this race round Imola, and also Leo Lund up 13 positions. And the second Aston Martin, the name Taz, but that is, let's see, that must be Ivan Santa Maria, who's currently 4th in our championship, also made up 9 places already. So a lot of the drivers that perhaps didn't have the best qualifying run, and Sixten Linhart is in the pits. Sixten Linhart is in the pits, and this is dry. He is going for mediums, and more drivers are going for this. He is the first driver to take this risk. Noel Carman's in the pits. We see Harry, I think. Yeah, Harry and Alexander Dimas also in the pits. Is this the cutoff point? If he makes this call right, if he's got this right, he could win the race.
You could completely flip it, turn it 180 if this call goes well. Now, the rain has calmed down. It is still coming down, but is extremely light at this stage. So the track is still damp, but it's not getting much wetter than it is now. I think we are close to that inflection point, but to be honest, I believe we might see the runners at the front in terms of inters. I think we might see them go a little bit longer. And oh, that is Leo Lund. That is Leo Lund who put it round Agua Minerale. He's dropped down to P9. And Ben Marples as well has dropped it as well. So these top runners have all of a sudden sunken down the field with some mistakes in that second sector.
Yeah, Sixten Linhart is quicker. He just approached Piratella, and as he went through Aqua Minerale, he's made up a second and a half up to the driver in front of him, who was Balandelekis. I think this is the time to go. This is the time to go into the pits. Sven Schumacher has gone for it. Bert Sprogas has yet to decide so. And Killan Racek, Lil Lund, and Ben Marples has gone. DRS has been enabled now. So this really is the call for all the drivers. It is dry weather tires. It is dry weather tires now. And as we were just saying, Sixten Linhart started in P16, was in P3 before his pit stop. I think he made the perfect call. I think he made the perfect call here. And I am so curious to see after the next lap at what position he's going to end up, because he's ahead of Sven Schumacher.
Wow, that is, yeah, brilliant. That is a masterwork right there from Sixten Linhart. And you can see everyone else kind of mimicking that, but the DRS being enabled is as good a sign as any that you need to get on those dry tyres. You need to do it now. I think Sprogius stayed a little bit longer out because I think he's going to be going for the soft compound like London Marples. That could net him a lot more pace, but of course that does mean he has to run those inters just that little bit longer in order to make sure that those softs don't drop off aggressively. We'll see how it goes. Sixten Linhart, what a call. What a call. Because they're right now, provisionally, in terms of taking pitting into account, they are leading. And they're setting purples all over the place.
They are 27.6 seconds behind the leader, as we now see Briot Sprogus come in. He is going for the medium, so he's not going to take any risks here. Of course, at the end of the race, we'll have 2 laps fresher tires. So we go over to Sixten Linhart, now coming out of the second Rivazza. Briot Sprogus is about to get to the exit. I think he's just going to retain that lead, but it's going to be close. Sixten Linhart now on the main straight, fastest lap at 21.5. Briot Sprogus is now out of the pits, and he will stay ahead. Sven Schumacher is also close with the DRS, but of course these drivers will have warm tires. Briot Sprogus will not have any warm tires. If he wants to go for a victory here, he will need to make that overtake, and he will need to do it quick, but Sven Schumacher is hot on his tail.
Yes, and the key thing is here that Sprogus has run a little bit later, so he's going to get more prime time with those tyres, but they're cold. They're not going to be up to operating temp just yet, and you can already see that Linhart has made up that gap. So Sprogus needs to nail this next sector, or he could get stuck behind that Alpine for the rest of the race.
We're going to see what Sixten Linhart is going to do as we are on board with him going into the Variante Alta. I don't think he wants to make a move now. At this point, Sprogus' tires are all warmed up, but you've got DRS. And keep in mind, Sprogus has still got the 3-second penalty for track limits. So virtually, Sixten's leading here. And if he can play the DRS game well, if he can do that for about 7 or 8 laps, he could very well pick up a win. And picking up a win from P16 as a reserve driver would be absolutely amazing. But I think Sven Schumacher will want to say something about it as Sixten Linhart goes around the outside, not going all the way, but he does want to make that move stick, and he's now ahead of Briot Sprogus. And more importantly, he does go a little bit wide. He does make it work. Sprogus is again looking for the inside, but that is not too bad for him. I think he might let him go. He doesn't let him go. Perhaps could have, because you can't play the DRS game, but what you want now is that Sprogus is your buffer. Sven Schumacher could overtake you with DRS. You're going to get overtaken by DRS. But if Sprogus overtakes you, that is not an issue. He's got a penalty. Sven Schumacher does not have a penalty. So your fight is going to be with Sven Schumacher. Lillian's 3 seconds behind. He's not in the equation for now. Unless they're going to battle so much that we're going to lose time. But at this point, his battle is with Sven Schumacher. And these drivers will be battling out in the final 7 laps.
I think you bring up a great point that these guys need to avoid battling if they don't want to get caught by the likes of Lillian and even Simone Violo a bit further down. We see Leo Lund has made an amazing charge up the field, so they did jump on softs. They did have that mistake on track, but they've done well to recover. They're really just trying to maximize, as with all these soft runners, just maximizing the grip that they have while they have it. But Sprogis needs to be on his best behavior right now, and you can see him. He's going to go for the push. Lilian is making up time at a scary rate, as he's already closed that gap to about 2 seconds. The key thing for Sprogis here is wants to get as much time as he can away from Lilian, as Lilian's effectively their yardstick. If they can get at least 3 seconds between maybe even just themselves and Sven Schumacher, then they know that they are going to get a guaranteed podium. But that's the kicker. They've got to fight for it, and they've got to fight for it hard without losing too much time.
That is also true, and keep in mind, the higher he finishes up, most of his direct competitors are not all that close if you look at the championship. So if Ritz Progress is going to end up in third, he's going to take over the lead in the championship from Alexander Dimas. He is now in P14 and doesn't look like he is going to be picking up any points for the time being, although the 3 drivers in front of him have penalties so far, but Ivan Santa Maria about 10 seconds ahead of him, and on fresher tires and on newer tires, softer compound. It's going to be all too difficult. In the meantime, Sven Schumacher has dropped back a little bit. Sixten Linhart has dropped back about half a second behind Riot Progress, but I don't think this is an issue for him. He can just stay here, pick up the DRS, pull by on the long straight, and then just make it work there. Not ruin his tires, just comfortably race in P2, and then when penalties apply, pick up the race win. I think he's got the perfect strategy, and maybe Sven Schumacher is saving a little bit. Let's see if we can get the telemetry enabled, because this is something that is going to be important now. Sixten Linhart on 37% of VRS, Sven Schumacher on 59, so 20% more. Björn Sproges on 25, he's using a lot to defend. And Simona Violo, also good to know, is about 10%. So Sven Schumacher does have about a 20% upper hand over Sixten Linhart, as we see some yellow through Sector 1, but none of the drivers have really crashed. Perhaps just gone off a little bit.
That was Dimas. He lost a lot of time. He's down in P14 now. But the real question on my mind is that Lilian has got a difficult position to be in right now. They had a really good run earlier, but like with Sprogis, I'm not sure what happened in Lilian's case, but they seem to have lost a lot of time to Sprogis, who was on the same rhythm, if you will. I think Sprogis is just unlocking some crazy pace. As Simone Violo is going to go even faster. It's going to be 169, 168 from the soft runner. Lilian gets it into P4, as Santa Maria and Leo Lund are going to trade a bit further back. And you can see everyone is giving it their all. But Sixten Linhart doesn't need to fight. I think he knows this, and that's why he's not going so aggressive. He's just using enough resource to be efficient, to make sure that they have enough on tap to defend from Sven Schumacher, but otherwise they don't need to be aggressive. All they need to do is stay within a second, coast behind Sprogis, as you said, and effectively just inherit the victory, because that 3-second penalty is going to basically hand it to them on a silver platter.
That is very true, but we see the gap already starting to increase a little bit now at 9/10 of a second, so he will need to stay within that DRS range as he now approaches the final sector. Just before the first Rivazza, you have your DRS points, so that should be fine for him this lap. But he does need to keep an eye on that, because if he loses his DRS in the last 3 or 4 laps, you're going to see a fight between him and Sven Schumacher. Björn Sprogesen only needs to gain 2 seconds in order to still get the race win, and he's by far the fastest driver on track now. He's at 1:16.2 with the fastest lap time so far. But yeah, now as you can see on the main straight, Sixten Linhart makes up about 4 or 5 tenths. So This is how much he will make up. But at the end of the final sector, just before the Rivazas, you will want to be within a second. If he fails to do so this lap, you could still see a fight for first after penalties are applied. If that doesn't happen now, and no mistakes happen, then Sixten Linhart just has to fight out with Sven Schumacher.
The crazy thing is that Linhart is playing it a little bit more conservatively, but even he was pushing into the ERS to keep that proximity. Sprogis is cooking absolutely everything. He's running that battery right to the limit. We've seen him on 0% quite a few times, but it is paying off. Lilian is now 3 seconds behind Sven Schumacher, so that Sprogis now knows he's going to get at minimum a podium, provided nothing changes from this point. We've just got a few laps left in this session, And what we can say is that everyone has given it absolutely everything. Some unorthodox strategies have come into the fold, but more important than that is that these drivers are really just using every ounce of skill, every ounce of track, and every ounce of bravery. Assistant Linhart is going to go for a move into the first corner. He's going to lock it in, but he's going to have a very fast, very angry Haas coming up on the inside. Is that going to be commitment? No, they're going to yield. They're not going to have the proximity, and Linhart is going to be taking that first spot. So even when you say they don't need to have it on track, these are drivers. They're going to give it everything, and they're going to say, even if we can technically inherit the win, I want it on merit. I want it on the asphalt.
That definitely seems to be the case now for Sixten Linhart, as he picked up first place for the time being. But in doing so, he has used most of his ERS. In the meantime, Sven Schumacher still about halfway the bar. He's got 48% to his name. This lap, what we're going to see, Sven Schumacher is within about half a second of our leader. He will have DRS. Riyad Sprogus is going to have DRS. Sixten Linhart not going to have DRS. This lap, he will really need to watch out. And because he did that overtake last lap and used so much ERS to get closer, he could be under pressure from Sven Schumacher. And I'm really curious to see what is going to happen now, because obviously Riyad Sprogus is going to come by. He's going to make that overtake stick, but what is Sven Schumacher going to be able to do? Is he going to be able to follow suit? Not yet, but he's still saving up. He knows that next lap he needs to make the move. Sixten Linhart, 2% battery. Sven Schumacher, 49%. Sixten Linhart really has to watch out the next time coming through the main straight.
The trap has been set with Sven Schumacher in mind. Sprogus and Linhart have been constantly fighting. Sprogus is effectively out of this fight because there's penalty, so all Sven Schumacher needs to do to win this race is hope that Linhart gets stuck behind Sprogus and he can get past that Alpine. If he can do that, he's going to win the race, and he's saved up everything for this moment. He's done a great job saving his battery, conserving his resources like his tires, and this is where it all comes to fruition. So we stick on board with this Alfa Romeo because I think that he's laid down his cards. He's got the royal flush in hand, and I think he's ready to call the other drivers bluff. As we come through the Ravazzas, this is where we see it set. And here we go. Final lap on board with Sven Schumacher right now, and they're going to give it absolutely everything. Down the start finish straight. He's going to be going for a push. Linhart is on the recharge. He can't do anything. That's 30% battery well spent, as that is going to be past the Alpine. He's going to lock it in through the first couple corners. Can he keep it through the rest of the lap is my question.
He does seem to be able to do so, but because he used so much ERS and Sven Schumacher had saved up this much, he could go for the overtake as we just at the previous lap. And it looks like playing the long game and strategy there, making sure you have enough ERS saved, is going to make it work for him. Is Sixten Linhart going to be able to make a do or die move to pick up their win as a reserve driver from P16? Will he have to settle for P2? Sven Schumacher knows he doesn't need to make any moves. He just needs to defend. And we do have the yellow in sector 2. It's Lillian actually losing a lot of time. He's now in P10, so he's not going to be picking up all too many points in the end. Sixten Linhart will try to go for a final push here, but Sven Schumacher has enough of that overtake left, now burned through everything. He has played the long game, and once penalties are going to apply, we're going to see Riyad Sprogus fall back. Remember, he will contest that because he did get pushed wide for one of them. It is him dropping down now. Sven Schumacher picks up the win. Sixten Linhart is in P2. Riyad Sprogus will inherit P3 as we see Simone Violo, Kilian Racek, Ivan Santamaria, Noel Carmen, Lillian in 8th, Milan Meyer still picking up points in 9th, and Leo Lund, the McLaren, in P10. But well played by Sven Schumacher there, playing the long game, making it work, and I do feel a bit for Sixten, to be honest. He could have had it.
But at the same time, P16 to P2, I hope we get a chance to talk to him, because that is an amazing, amazing drive from a reserve driver. And just as a driver in general, to do that kind of turnaround, that complete 180, is nothing short of spectacular. But Sven Schumacher is going to get the provisional win of the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. and hopefully get a chance to talk with everyone on the podium, because you're going to see that these drivers I am very much looking forward to having a conversation with. See who turns up in the waiting room in just a moment. As we come through the podium, you can see it all on screen, and the amount of penalties as well. Harry had 15 seconds.
That is a boatload of penalties, and since they're usually given in 3 or in 5s, he picked up 5 times track limit penalty, and you only get one after 3, so he's picked up 15 warnings at the very least, and that drops him down the order to P13. Sven Schumacher, of course, getting the provisional win. Fastest lap time is for Riyad Sprogus. Sven Schumacher coming from P4 in the grid, making it a win here. And to be fair, we had everything this race. We had nice overtakes, we had a safety car, we had full wets, we had inters, we had dry tires, a lot of overtakes, some drivers from so far back coming in. I mean, look at this. Noah Carmen finishing P7, coming from 15th. Ivan Santamaria started 17th, finished 6th. Kilan Racek from 12 to 5. Also Simone Violo from 9 to 4th. Brett Sprogus from 6 to 3rd. A lot of drivers making up a whole load of positions, and the drivers that started more towards the front falling back a lot more. But really, for me, driver of the day has to be Sixten Linhart. What an amazing race that he has put up here. I remember as a reserve driver, you're really putting yourself on the cards here for a full seat next season, because that is a performance worthy of a seat.
Yeah, if there is a statement in terms of your pace as a driver, getting 16 to second, I don't even have the words for it. I'm literally struggling to form the words. That is, in terms of performances, like rocketing up the field, that is the best that I have seen in league racing. That is literally bordering on a last to first. I need people to realize the gravitas of that. Pulling a last to first is a difficult challenge in and of itself. Sixten Linhart nearly did it as a reserve role in such varying conditions as this, and in league racing. You don't get last to first like that. You don't get those people trying to do challenges anyway. Like that's etiquette wise. But you don't get that kind of gain. You don't see that every day. So the amazing driving from all of them, but yeah, especially Linhart. We are going to see if anyone is going to available to have a chat with. Looks like we do have Sven Schumacher. So let's have a chat.
Winner.
Go. So, Sven. Well done. First off, I want to say a brilliant job for your provisional win out in the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. How you feeling about your performance today?
I feel quite happy, I can say. Of course, it was difficult from wets to inters to dries, and I actually got a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which made it extra difficult. But I got lucky with the safety car, so I could remove that within my next pit stop. Going on to a new set of inters. To be really honest, I think my strategy of going a bit higher wings just before the race started, or before the qualifying started, I need to say, because of Park Ferme, was worth it, because my pace on inters was, yeah, I can say quite decent. And overall, I just feel really happy.
If we look at your strategy, especially towards the end of the race, because you were saving your battery, you were making sure that you had 50% all the way. We were saying in the commentary box, in the last lap, you were going to try to make that move, because we saw that Sixten Linhart did not have any battery percentage left there, and you were able to make the move stick there on the straight. Were you surprised that you were able to come by, or was this all planned?
I think a bit of both. I knew obviously that he had. His rear thingy was blinking, so that's how I knew he had less than 10% battery left. So from there on, I just saved my battery and hope until the end. But like I already said, I was on higher wing, so it was really hard to pass. But at the end, I was coming closer and closer and closer, and I still had 20% battery left. And then again closer and closer, and then I got past him. And then it was, yeah, it was P2 and P1 professionally.
That is very nice to see. And also, with our eyes on the championship board, you were 25 points behind the leader, which was Alexander Dimas. Not going to be picking up any points, so you're going to close in by 16 points if nothing changes. So you'd be only 9 points behind. Of course, Russ Progress is going to pick up a couple points. If he finishes in P3, also had fastest lap, he's going to get 11 more points. So you would be about a race win, 16, 17 points behind the leader of the championship. So if the results stand as is, and I don't think there were any incidents that you were involved in, that should put you up right back into the championship fight. What are your thoughts on that?
To be really honest, I just need to stay consistent. I think that one is the main factor in this type of league racing. But yeah, I think Riards can get his penalty removed, as we were in a battle, and then he got, obviously, in really wet conditions. It's hard to keep it side by side. But I pushed him a little wide there, and I think he can remove that penalty. Although in the first lap he cut the whole circuit, gaining a lot of places, so I think he's getting a report for that. But I'm not sure. Yeah, we will see where I end up. Currently, I'm just happy to be here, and I hope next week in Belgium, I believe. I also hope to put in a consistent performance there.
Hey, well, yeah, and regardless of what happens with Stewart's reports, let's say Spurious does get his penalty removed, you're still going to be in P2, mate. So, all around brilliant performance. Would you say that Imola was a strong track for you, or are you not particularly a fan? I mean, it was wet for one, so that's a big wild card. But Imola as a track, is that a stronger or a weaker one in your library?
A weaker one, definitely. Beginning of this day, I was on 0.6s and 0.5, 13.5, 13.6s. And then I took a huge break of around 3 hours to just reset my mind. Then got back into the rig 2 hours before the race, and I started doing little by little a bit quicker times. And then obviously with the higher wing setup coming into the qualifying, it was quite hard, I would say, to adjust to it. But after 4 tries and 3 completed laps, I actually PB'd, so that was good in the session.
Absolutely brilliant. And of course, we head to Spa next round, but with the massive haul of points, very, very good result out there today. Do you think this is the start of something? Start of a sweep?
I hope so. Of course, I can't walk outside of my shoes, but I think that's a Dutch saying. I don't know if you understand it, but
I do.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, I would just see, just keep the momentum going, and we'll see where I end up.
Momentum, you hopefully shall. Well, it was great to talk to you, mate. Again, congratulations for the win out there, and we'll of course see where it goes.
Thank you very much.
That was Sven Schumacher, and we have got a bit of a commentary box, favourite for his amazing performance out there. We're going to be talking to none other than Inhart, and we're just dragging him in here. So apologies for the abrupt drag in, mate, but welcome to the commentary box. And before we say anything else, congratulations on your amazing performance today. I just want to ask, what were your aims coming into this race?
Top 10. Oh, my pace was not looking good in practice, so I was really happy with gain.
And did you have a particular moment where you realised I could win this? Was there a particular moment that stuck out to you that they could be on the cards?
There was under the safety car, I was told that everyone in front of me was on old tires, and I was not like P3. So I had a thought that I could win.
That was, of course, when you swapped and got a pretty early run on the rest of the field and really managed to jump up in the positions. So was it? I guess it was more reactive based on the rest of the field and hearing they were on tires, or did you kind of have a plan from the outset in terms of how tire strategy was going to go?
I had no idea because I've never done wet on the game, so I didn't know much about the inters and wets, how they worked. So I was just like really reacting to the other people.
Wow.
Wow.
Never doing wet on the game, and then pulling out that kind of performance. I've said this a lot, but honestly, how you did out there today was absolutely amazing. Because I think going from P16 to P2 is definitely not something you see every day. So, my question is, how comes you're not in a full-time seat, mate? Imagine this performance day in, day out. You'd be smashing this. Forgive me for going a bit over the top, but that was truly an amazing performance out there on track today, and like the highlight, really.
Well, simply just I was in F5 before, so like I got moved up, and then reserve was only available.
So I take it you'd be gunning for a full-time seat at some point, or maybe even to move into even higher tiers time round?
Well, Marek, he left, so maybe there's full-time seat there.
Oh, he left.
He just left the Discord.
That changes things. We'll see where it goes. Alan? Anything from you, Mick?
Well, there's a few questions I want to ask you. So you were the first driver to make the decision to go for the dry weather tires, so go for the medium compound. What led you to make that decision? Why did you go for the dry tires so early? Because in hindsight, it was the perfect moment to go for it. But what made you make that decision first?
I was told by my engineer that the mediums could be the best, so had to risk it.
Well, that must have been an amazing call from him then, indeed. And then if we go back to the final few laps of the race, we saw you running a little bit lower on ERS. And of course, in the final lap, we had Sven Schumacher sailing by and snatching that race win for you. What went through your mind in the last couple of laps? What was your strategy?
Well, I was like wanting to save my ears, but I saw Rihard, he was trying to gap me, so I had to use, and then Sven, he just had a bunch save from the wet, so that's how he managed.
All right, and then we also have a question from chat, I think from one of your friends. The question is hashtag thoughts on peak. I'm told that you would understand.
Yeah, no thoughts.
All right.
Perfect answer. Just no. Amazing stuff.
Really getting Raikkonen vibes here. Good answer.
Why say many word when you do trick? But
That's a good saying.
we move forward, and Spa is next up. Of course, in the reserve position, but how do you feel about Spa? Strong track?
I think it's quite a strong track for me, because we've done WR, where I'm in tier 3, and I almost won it, so I think I can do something there as well.
Looking forward to seeing it. So, again, great job out there today, and hopefully we get to see you on the track and in that top flight in future rounds. Great job, mate. See you next time.
Yeah.
And we have one more driver left to talk to. It's a familiar face at the top of the grid as of late, and had some very good momentum. So of course, talk to them about that. We'll talk to them about the penalty. It is going to be Brian Sprogis. I know you're watching Schumacher's stream. Apologies for that one, mate. But I'm going to draw you in here, and let's talk about the race. So first off, great performance. The on-track pace was really good. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that penalty, though?
Well, honestly, I think it should get removed because I got, I think, two unfair penalties and warning, sorry. But uh, so yeah, uh, after the race, I think I had three warnings, so that should be like 100% removed. So
Or is there a
we'll
particular
see.
incident that caused those warnings, or was it just the game giving you a double by mistake?
At the start, when Marek closed the gap, he moved under the brakes, so I had nowhere to go. He pushed me off the track, so I got a warning somehow. But yeah, and after an incident with Sven when he overtook me, he just gave me no room basically, and I got a warning as well. And on the third one, I honestly can't remember where I got the third, but yeah.
So I'm expecting to see Steward's Inquiries is going to be lighting on fire with this one. Did you have a particular plan coming into this race?
Of course, win. I know I had the pace. I like the track. So the pace at the practice looked really good. I had a really good pace. But then on quali and I had some bottles. My banker was really good. I was really happy with it. But then two really bad laps. Second lap was bad. Hadn't didn't have the grip. And then the third one, I was going well, but then I invalidated. So it should have been at least top three, if not even a top two or four. So really unlucky. We'll try to work on that. So yeah, because I have been bottling a lot of quali. So, but then I gain back the place in the race. So.
You say that's your main point of weakness right now, is just having good quali laps. Of course, you've got the race pace, that much is evident. But would you say that's like your main area of improvement, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think it's just the stress, the pressure I got. I need to work on that because the pace, as I said in practice, looked good. So it's not about my pace. It's just about the stress, the pressure, and just get the lap together. And yeah.
From that's me done.
All right, well, you are hoping to see your penalty removed. That would mean that you're going to pick up your fourth win of the season out of 7 races, if that comes true. But regardless of any penalties, you were 1 point behind Alexander Dimas. Alexander Dimas is not picking up any penalties. So, regardless of that, really, if you're not going to drop down much more down the order after Stewart's inquiries, which would honestly really surprise me, you have now taken over the lead of the championship.
Yeah, that was the plan. So.
El Plan is coming into motion.
Okay, that is good to know. And then, yeah, if we look at the next race that we have coming up, that of course will be the beautiful track of Spa-Francorchamps. What's your experience on that track?
Not too much. Haven't practiced the track. I did some laps, but didn't quite like the track. But we'll see how it goes when I start to practice like seriously and make the setup and all that. So yeah.
All right, and then my final question: if we do look at the championship, because as we just mentioned, you have taken over the championship lead. We talked to you about this a little bit last week, where you mentioned that Alexander Dimas is one of your competitors. Do you consider any other driver up in contention for the title this season, or is Alexander Dimas your only rival, at least in your eyes?
I think Lilian can be quite strong and fast, and also Sven. So they both are really fast. So we'll need to take a look at them. But yeah, at the moment Dimas is still my rival. So we'll see how the season goes, and we'll see how standings goes.
All right. Well, at the end, congratulations to you with your results so far. We're of course going to see after the stewards' inquiries what position that is going to be, and we are going to see you next race in Spa.
Thank you.
And that is going to do it, folks. So that is a chance to talk to our top 3 drivers, and of course, we look forward from. So, round 8 is going to take us, as mentioned, Spa-Francorchamps. It is 7,004 meters of pure driving challenge. Ironically, 4 meters above the F1 and FIA Grade 1 specification after the remodel of the bus stop chicane, which I believe was precisely 4 meters under the limit before the modification. So it gets a little bit of a pass. It's a heritage track. I mean, come on, it is Spa. Eau Rouge and Raidillon, Pouin, just to name a few places that have cemented themselves in motorsport history. And I cannot wait to see what these drivers cook up, what the championship holds, and of course you do not want to miss it. Want to see the results of the stewards' inquiries and how that may affect the standings. You want to see these last few races of the season, and I want to see potential championship lead start to get pulled out. We have still got a few drivers who are well in contention within a few points of each other, even with these provisional results.
Yeah, that is very true. So when we are getting back to the next race in Spa, we're going to take you through the stewards' inquiries and let you know how the championship has formed after those first 7 races. In the meantime, also make sure to check out the GT Omega products as they are our official sponsor. Use the code discount code PSGL at the checkout for a nice discount, which is also very important to do if you're going to pick up any of their products. As for us, very few exciting races ahead. So we have Spa, we have Jeddah, we have Mexico City, and around 11 and 12 still have to get revealed. And yeah, at the end, we will see, at least as early as next week, how the championship lead has changed, because the last few weeks we've constantly had a new leader. It went from Lillian to Milan Meyer to Alexander Dimas. It certainly looks like it's going to go to Riyad Progress, but by how many points we will know by next week.
Find out, and as for now, we're going to be signing off. You've been an amazing audience in the chat. Thank you all for joining us. Be sure to join us next week, and we will see you. Take care, folks. Bye for now. Same time next week for Spa-Francorchamps Belgian Grand Prix with PCF4 EL. Woo!
Desperately trying to hang on. He's got the inside. Oh, here he's through on the left-hand side. Hooks the apex, gets on the power nicely, and that is job done. Jarno Opmeer now to the last couple of corners now. His finest drive, his greatest drive, and he's done it at the Circuit of the Americas. He returns to the top step of the podium. Once again, the ghost is back. Jarno Opmeer wins the US Grand Prix in a stunning Grand Prix.